Welcome everyone to another public Down Under trading session. Today we're going to be having a look at Bitcoin. I want to talk about what's happening in China. There's been a lot of news coverage of what's happening in China within their stock market within the last 24 hours. So that's something I want to go over. Also want to discuss bearish and bullish sentiment for crypto and for Bitcoin, because I'm starting to see a little that the bears are starting to get a bit noisy again, calling for much lower levels. And yeah, I just want to go over that and talk about what part of the cycle I believe that we're in and where things are likely to head. So it might be a little bit of a longer session compared to normal, but we'll see how we go. So there's a lot of news articles and even people tweeting about the CSI 1000 index, which essentially is a ticker for the 1,000 common small caps in China, and how they've had a massive drop off over the past month or couple months. And so I've got the ticker up here just on Google, because I was struggling to find the actual index as opposed to ETFs on TradingView. But as we can see, I've got it on the last 6 months, and it's pulled back about 34%. Now that does look quite dramatic. To anyone's eye for stocks, you don't normally see big pullbacks of that gravity. But in comparison, I like to compare things, and I want to compare this to what happened to the Russell 2000 in the US when they had their pullback last year. Actually, not last year. It was the year prior. So I've got this open here. So the pullback, it did start over 2 years ago, and then it pulled back and pretty much traded sideways for the best part of 18 months, almost a little bit less than 18 months. But we can see that pullback was around 34% for the Russell 2000. Now, the Russell 2000 is 2,000 small cap companies in the States. So it's a comparable, this is an ETF, but it's a comparable index from different nations. So looking at this, we can see that a pullback of that magnitude, 34%, which is exactly what the China one is on, is not unheard of. We've actually seen a very recent comparison in that being the Russell 2000. And another interesting point is, even though the S&P and the Nasdaq are trading at all-time highs, the Russell 2000 is actually nowhere near it. It is actually right now, as we speak, still 20% away from its all-time high, which is a long way off. So whilst we look at that and we see what's happened here, so we'll go off the last month, it's down 22.5%. We'll go in and have a look at HSI. And the HSI at the moment is relatively flat for this month. Did have quite a bearish close on last month. But we'll just do a little price range here. So this is all very rough, but over the last month, it's down about 9%, as opposed to the small caps index being down 22.5%. So what this is telling us, and we actually see this in crypto as well, think of the small caps as alts, and think of the HSI or S&P as Bitcoin. The alts or the small caps fall a lot harder than what the big boys do. And what we've seen with Bitcoin over the past 18 months or so, and even with the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq, it's been the big players that have been making all the gains, pulling the index or the asset class out of its bear market into a bull market and leading from the front. And we're even seeing that right now with if we go back to the Russell, old mate Russell, which is chopping sideways, doing nothing. It's not contributing anything to the stock market in the States. It's still down 20% from its all-time high. Whereas, look at that. It's, we're up a couple 100 points from the previous high, or 150 points from the previous all-time high on the S&P. And the Nasdaq is up 800 and something points from its previous all-time high. But the Russell's nowhere to be seen. So I think when we're seeing a lot of these news stories talking about the small caps, is it really the end of the world for China? Probably not. Probably not. If that was 23% drop on the HSI on the big players, yeah, that would cause for a massive concern. Where the Hang Seng is trading right now is also a bit of a concern too. We're zeroing in on this low very much. You could suggest that if you look at this candle here, there's no wick to the downside. So the fact that this is wicked down past the bottom of the candle, grabbing the liquidity, and now it's had a bounce up, could suggest that we may be out of the woods on the Hang Seng, and this is going to start forming a bottom and moving off again. Very possible. It actually plays into what my thought process is with China. Last year, they printed $1 trillion to try and bring some life into their economy, and that's not going to let up this year. It'll actually probably ramp up even more this year. So the Chinese, not financial advice, but get on board. But definitely not financial advice. So we'll have a look at the DAX, because I did see something about the DAX, that it has made another all-time high. And I've got my markings there from when I spoke about the DAX a couple months ago. And it just keeps going to new highs, like strength to strength. But yet back here we apparently we're in a recession. Once we're up in this area, then the herd gets involved and says we're going to the moon, when we've already taken off. We took off way back down here, back in October 22. So it takes, a good 2 years before the herd realizes that, hey, we're actually not going back. The world isn't ending. And they start getting in 2024, which is known as the winner's curse, if you're familiar with the 18.5-year property cycle. The 18.5-year property cycle touts the end of 2025 to the start of 2026 as when the economies start falling off the cliff, and the property starts crashing, and from that we then start seeing the stock market start following suit as well. And the winner's curse is getting into the market in the 2 years leading up to that cliff, which would put it at around about right now. If you're starting to get into some of these markets that are at all-time highs now, you're going to get very emotional and enthralled in the gains that are being made, and you're going to be holding on, thinking that we're going all the way, I don't know, wherever. You're just seeing the gains. You're only new to the space. You haven't seen all of this, studied the land cycles, and then you get caught with your pants down when things crash. Come crashing down. It could be 2027. No, nobody knows specifically, but can say with some reasonable confidence in the land cycle that it is going to be around that end of 2025, 2026 mark, just based on historical data. So we'll move over to Bitcoin now. I'll jump in my messy chart to begin with. It's really been running quite flat for the month of Feb so far. I mean, we've gotten up to 43.8 and rejected. I took a short during that period. I actually got in this second pump up was when I got into a trade. I wasn't able to enter a trade back here for real life reasons. So I was fortunate to be given the second opportunity. Closed it out, took profits, and then we got the monthly open, came up, and it's just been going sideways at about 43k, give or take. Like, it's not going to be a flat line like it's dead on a bed, but that's about as close to dead on a bed as you're going to get, really. There was a little grab to the downside, but bounced off the high time frame 50% level and straight back to where the flat line area is. I'm still seeing, in my mind, a run up to this 45k area. I was keen on around 44 to 44.2, but just the length of this sideways action typically means that whenever the movement goes up or down, it's going to be greater. If you've only got a short period of going sideways, there's not enough liquidity built to the side that it wants to move to help propel it. But when you do get these longer periods of sideways, you can get those runs up. The reason why I don't think we're going to be pushing through and breaking past 50k, we could run up to 50k, but the reason why I don't think we're quite ready to break through to 50k is we're seeing a lot of volume has come in. Let me change the time frame I'm looking on. So we saw, I'll go into a cleaner chart because this one's got too much crap on it. Okay. So we can see some big red bars popping up, and it all started off here. This is all before the when there was the ETF news. That was the fake news. This one here, big selling came in, so we can see, and then the real ETF news came out, and we came up. We tapped the 618 golden pocket, and then massive selling volume came in. Now, we haven't seen selling volume like this for a long time. Go out to a daily. Let's see how much I can fit on the screen. So pretty much to around here, which was the banking crisis, was the last time we saw volume of equal equal value. And then prior to that, it was the FTX collapse that triumphs everything. So that's a lot of selling pressure that's come into the market, and it's sort of a bit of a turning point in what's happening with the price structure. As we can see with these runs up, the price keeps moving up. There's not a great deal of volume. There is some decent red candles, but it doesn't actually start to change the landscape of how the chart looks until we start getting here above the 50% level. Then we can see this sort of upward movement starts to flatten out a little bit. And then we have the ETF news, the massive red candles. And now we've got the change of trend. And you can physically see it in the chart when you zoom out compared to what's happened the entire run up from 25k. It physically looks different. So with that, I think we need to spend a bit more time in this region since we've gotten up into the 40k area. We've had a few dips down below 40k. Well, really only this period here got below 40k, and that's it. I think we can spend a bit more time below 40k, but I don't really think that there's a lot of depth below there either. Maybe this golden pocket would be a good point, but I'm highly skeptical that I'm definitely not banking on getting there. This 50% level around 37k, I've got a reasonable amount of confidence that we're going to get down to that level. It could just be a wick. It may be a little bit of sideways, drop down, a little bit of sideways, and then pop out. At which time I think is going to be almost the last very good opportunity to start to finish off your bags of alts that you may have. Even now, there's some alts that are at a reasonable price. Like NIA is at a reasonable price as well. There is a couple others. I did touch a little bit on Sol in the general chat, and I didn't really say that I'm not going to be getting into it, but I alluded to the fact that I'm unlikely to invest in it based on its market cap evaluation. So basically, why haven't I gotten into alts until this point? I guess that's probably something that some people may wonder that have listened to me talk about them. And that's because I've been heavily invested my portfolio in Bitcoin. Been DCAing for a long time into Bitcoin because of the dominance was just continuing to rise. And once we did get up above this 50% level, I have TP'd twice. I think I only announced one of the TPs at around 44,200, but I did TP in this region as well a little bit. And so that then allows me to rotate that capital into alts because I've had my capital invested. I've ridden the gains, I've realized the gains, and now I'm ready to move that money into alts. But I've gotten into some of these alts, for instance, like NIA at $1.90, $1.50. Yep, I probably could have. If I did have a large bankroll sitting on the sidelines for crypto that wasn't already in the market, I probably would have. But my game plan was get into Bitcoin early, and then continue to DCA to my position. And then I paused and wait till we got up to here, took a little bit of profit, and now I'm ready to rotate that into alts, which I've already started doing a little bit. Once we do get into this zone from around the 37k mark, I'll probably fully deploy into the alt that I want to get into. And so, whilst we are here at these levels, I am starting to see some bearish sentiment on Twitter. I actually saw this one fella who does Elliott waves only about half an hour ago. He put a tweet up, and his first scenario had Bitcoin on a bearish pattern, heading to 10K. And for this stage of the market that we are in for crypto, with excluding the land cycle, even just looking at the crypto market, it's near impossible to get down to 10K from where we are right now. I'd be extremely nervous if we lost 30K, let alone getting down to 10K. I actually commented on the tweet and I said the only way we're getting down there is if Donald Trump turns out to be Satoshi. Because I just don't. I think it's a unicorn. It really is a unicorn. His other scenario, which was a bullish scenario, had us sort of going up to 45K, and then pulling back down into this zone around 37K, I think it was, before continuing up and breaking through 50K. I might see if I can bring up the tweet. Actually, it'll be easier to show it. Okay. So this was the bearish Elliott wave heading down to 10K. And this was his bullish one. So essentially it's sweeping the golden pocket, and that's just a local golden pocket where the fib's drawn from where the 5 is down to where the A is. And that 618 sits at around 45K to 45.4, I think, from memory. And coming down to form the C wave, which is at about 36K, which is the 50% level and that's that 50% level would be drawn from the 25K low of the prior cycle mini cycle that we were in, up to 49K. And then we start going into projections for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So those projections would work on where the top of the 5 is, down to where the C is at the 37K. That'll be a fib level, probably the 618. And then the 2 was probably a 50% level from the C to the 1, and then so on and so forth. So that's how that would work. And looking at the timing at the bottom of the chart, it's fairly similar to my timing analysis as well, looking at Bitcoin and how it reacts with the halving and when it breaks certain levels with halving, specifically getting significant closes above the 50% level, the high time frame 50% level on a monthly close. We already have had closes above it. They're not great. They're not massive closes. I'm talking a sustained close, a couple thousand points. It will not get back below that level. I think I've got that projected for out in around the June mark, which almost sort of pretty much lined up with what his idea is. He's got it probably closer to July. And then once we break through that, I've got us going up and testing the all-time high not long after, and breaking through that all-time high come around November. So I think that all sort of plays out with how he's got this Elliott wave drawn up. So I actually quite like it because it correlates with my thoughts and analysis as well. we'll just jump into perhaps sweat, because we do sweat every time. So sweat has just been on a chop. It's on a chop fest for the last, I don't know, nearly 2 weeks. Just a lot of sideways action on low volume as well. This is the Bybit perp chart, so it's not the highest volume chart for sweat. That volume's probably just a lot of bots and market maker trades. There's really not a lot to report here. We are starting to chop sideways to get close to the parallel channel, the bottom of the parallel channel. So we do want to start seeing this move up. It is starting to make me a little bit nervous with where sweat is sitting. If we do have a tank in Bitcoin down to that 37K ish level, what's going to happen to sweat? Because we really don't want to lose these lows over here in the buy zone that I had drawn. We want to maintain that as support. If we start seeing that lost, then I'm going to say it's probably likely that we're going to see this low here get lost as well, which really propelled us. That really propelled us up to have a crack at 1.5 cents. But first things first, this has to be maintained as support. So far it is. It's not being tested, but it's still providing support there. It was tested a few times back in the middle of January. So we'll see what happens with that level first. And if that gets broken, then we start looking at this level over here at 0.0085, the very key level that I was talking about back when we were trading in that region. Getting back, we'll talk hypotheticals. If we were to see this level here get broken, the next key level to watch is around 0.0077. That's just basically looking at market structure. So we've got these two tops here. I'd probably draw a purple box from, say, 0.007 up to 0.0075 or something to that effect, and that would become a buy zone. It's actually where my average entry sits for sweat. But there's a long way to go to get down there, and there's a lot of structure that has to break down to get to that point as well. I think it is quite unlikely, but we have to be prepared for that sort of stuff. To the upside, we really want to start breaking back into this trading range up here. We can see that the what was support and that broke down has been flipped into resistance, because each time we wick into it, it's getting sold off each time. But the sell-offs are getting smaller. But yeah, the sell-offs are getting smaller. We're going to break through it at some point. Hopefully it's just sooner rather than later, and we can have a little bit of a pump before Bitcoin has a bit of a dump, so we have a bit more room for sweat to fall. That would be the ideal scenario, I think. And we definitely can come up. Like, we've got this wick here that's only got about a third of it filled. We like to see 50% of these wicks get filled at least. So we could see a nice pump come in the next few days for sweat. Let's wait and see what happens. Was there anything that you guys wanted me to have a look at?
Yeah, Link. It's been doing great guns recently, and also Rose as well.
Right, Ronan's.
Rose.
Oh, Rose. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. and Link.
Yep.
So I can see Link doing about 22 at the current pace. It's just blown through kind of, all the rejection zones over the last kind of like 48 hours, to be honest with you. Had a really, really strong weekend.
I wonder if I want to tip my phone to the side. Yeah, so it's Link is actually in a pretty good spot to short at the moment, to be honest. It can run up to, if it does break through this $20 to $21 area, it's gonna go for a nice. It's gonna stretch the legs out, that's for sure. Probably up to around 28, but it is in resistance territory at the moment. I mean, we've got, and I'm really zoomed out here on the daily time frame. So right now, where we're trading, we've got this point here where it got rejected and went right. This is when it was going into its bear market. Got rejected right where we are right now at about $19.50. And then over here, we've also got when $19.50 was proved to be support. So it would right now it would be assumed that it's at resistance. Although looking at this, it has broken the trend line, but trend lines they're good, but they're neither here nor there. They're going to break at some point. I try not to use them too often. So I'd say that it's probably prime for a bit of a short. There's a lot of green candles there. There's not a lot of volume compared to what we had back here on the breakout of the parallel channel. Volume has come in, but it's definitely, it's about half as much volume as what we had back here on the breakout. I think it'd be, if you're wanting to take a trade on it, I'd be looking to take a risk managed short. And if it was to break above around, say, $21.50, $22, then I'd probably I'd flip long and ride it up to that $28 level based on this top over here. So, yeah, that's around $20.60.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like the level I'm looking at. I'm just waiting for kind of the next 5 hours to see how it pans out with NYE and see if this BTC pump still keeps going, and see what level it will reach. Because as you said, if it goes past the 21 level, then it's gonna run. It's seriously gonna run. But I'm optimistic that it's reaching its kind of key level, or maybe it's gonna hit kind of, as I said, 21.5, 22. And then it's going to be a hard rejection back down, but time will tell.
Yeah, that's right. And these are if we all knew what was going to happen, we'd all be bloody gazillionaires, So I think it's definitely at resistance now. And if you are into day trading, it would be a good short to take. I have seen someone post something on this. I'll see if I can, after I finish up here, I'll see if I can find someone. I think I remember reading a tweet about it a couple of days ago with a decent chart. Saves me having to chart it properly. But yeah, I'll chuck it up and I'll see what levels they had identified. I'm pretty sure it was around the $20 mark though, which is where we're more or less at for take. And what was the other one? You said Rose. Is that right? So it's had a bit of a pump. I might just do a bit of a price range on it from the low. So it's about 3.5x up. from its lows. I was having a look at Rose. So it's on a bit of a pullback. I actually think that it looks like a similar chart to Nia, to be honest. Because Nia sort of came into the game late as well, had a pump up to $20. This isn't $20, but it's probably relative in its tokenomics, I suppose. And then, dumped right down, fell away, and then it's had a bit of a pump up. At the moment, it's sitting almost 2.5x off the lows, which Nia is not too. It's a bit more than that, but not too far off. And it's peaked at about 340%, which is, I think, Nia is about 460% from its lows, thereabouts. So it's fairly similar to Nia. I actually don't have any volume on this chart, so I might drag up another chart. We'll go Binance. Yeah, so it's had a bit of volume come in to the market, which is good to see. Not the selling wicks are smaller than as we can see, the red days are smaller than the green days, which is always good to see. Although these, with excluding this bar that I'm on right now, these next green days that are quite big, they're not really big winners for the bulls, because their body of the candle is actually quite small. We'll try to draw a fib. Alright, so looking at this, it's made its high, and this fib's very roughly drawn, but it's thereabouts. Made its high, had the retrace down to the 786, which we know alts love the 786, and that has turned into a bit of a bounce. Looks like it could be getting a bit of a rejection now, because we are seeing these deep wicks to the upside. It means that sellers are starting to step in again, and the volume has picked up a bit from where we were in this region here. The volume was quite low. Coming up, the volume has stepped up. So we can draw another fib from the high to this low. Okay, we'll delete that one. So now we're seeing it's gotten rejected from the 618 on the uptrend. It's literally just tapped it, and now it's coming down. I think that there's a bit more downside at play here for Rose. Looking at this, again, that's quite rough, but given that we saw it bounce off the 786 from the recent high it made, I'd probably be looking for it to come down to around this 10-cent mark, 9.5, 10 cents, something like that, in that vicinity, before it has a bit of a bounce again. It could be forming a bit of a triangle, and I might draw it up.
Yeah, as I said, I mean the uplift was quite unexpected, to be honest with you. It's not had that kind of like pump for a while. I took a couple of longs on it, and I did quite well out of it. Those are the two ones which I'm kind of looking in the alts at the moment that have got kind of like the most movement, because they have been quite rapid. But again, that's just my take, as a clip trader.
Yeah. Yeah, no, well, you can trade this up and down. Like, you could wait for a little bit of a bounce and then grab a short on it down, TP, use the fibs as your TP levels, and then look to get a long down here to ride it up again. But that's probably a bit of a triangle. I don't really trade triangles, but I'm just going to leave it there, and maybe in a week or so we'll when's it start to get really tight towards the end of the month. Yeah, in a week or two, we'll come back and have a look, and we'll see how it played out.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting one at the moment.
Get a little bit of a bounce like that, and before it takes off. That's a really poor drawing, but we'll go. We'll leave it there. Because we can then start doing projection, and it really starts getting messy. We come down to this 786, and then we might come up to the 618 and bounce off the top of the triangle. Then you could do another fib down to the 786, which might end up around there before it takes off. The thing with triangles, though, you really don't want them to run to the end. Let me clean this up because it's messy. You really don't want them to run to the end. Typically, when they run to the end of the triangle, they sort of tip out and fall out. You want it to break out a bit sooner, or do a fake out. Fake out to the downside. Break away and back in and take off.
Yeah, I mean, the art of being a clip trader is, being working off like 10-15%. I'm in and out like a flash. Normally, my trades are less than 4 hours tops. I loathe to leave anything open overnight, let alone, anything more than that, unless I've got, a massive loss pending. It's, as I said, I mean, it's kind of the fine art of the quick movement. And this is why I'm really interested in these two at the moment. Rose was so rapid, and it's not really on my watch list before. But I've traded on Link before, and I can just see where the curve is on this at the moment. Like you said, the resistance point, and I know it's going to drop, and it's going to drop hard. So that for me means there's kind of that window of opportunity. Like talked about the golden pocket, where I can work really quickly in the space of like 2 or 3 hours, and I can turn over, maybe using 1,000 trade block, anything up to about 600, 800, even 1,000 profit within 3 trades on that. It really is just trying to work out, where the liquidity is coming from, what the market's done over the last 48 hours, and also in correlation with kind of BTC. And that's why I'm really interested to see, excuse me, what happens at NYE opening today. Because it's been quite a strong morning. BTC is kind of plateauing at about 43.1 at the moment. Now, historically, with the opening of NYE, there's always a sell-off for BTC normally, and then it bounces 2 or 3 hours later on where Silicon Valley takes open. So you have the downtrend of about an hour and a half, 2 hours max to try and short before then the upturn normally happens at around kind of, as I said, an hour and a half after that. So it's really kind of like a really small window of opportunity to find out where that finite space is and take the opportunity when you can. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think how I charted Rose just then, it's probably more suited to a short-term swing trade, I guess, would be the best way to put it. It is probably one that you could take with your stop loss and go to sleep on. You're probably looking to trade more like a 5-minute chart. Although this is a poor 5-minute chart because there's not a lot of structure in this at this time frame. We've got this massive just sort of run up, and now it's going into a bit of a sell off. So there's not much structure in that to find some support to then bounce. We could potentially find some support back here, but as a clip trader, all the way back here might not necessarily be relevant to now if your intention is to get in and get out real quick.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, like if it did come down to this is my chart. I was on the Rose USD chart.
I mean, the correlation which I normally use with BTC is going to go down by about 250 dollars. There is that kind of, there's a window there with the alt to kind of look at that kind of spin for a trade.
Yeah.
Normally the margin from thereabouts or maybe 3.5 to 5, depending on kind of BTC. There's been quite it's around the 43-day marker, so you run up maybe.
You're really quite muffled, guy. You're really quite muffled, mate.
My reception is terrible where I am, Nick.
It's all good. Oh, I think that probably draws us to a close. Yeah, I think that probably draws us to a close. We covered off a number of topics. Looked at the China markets in comparison to the US markets. Had a look at the DAX, Bitcoin, market sentiment. We even touched on Elliott waves, which isn't something that we've really looked at previously, which is good to go through. So hope that you guys learn something and can take something from this catch up. Thanks for joining.